Well, guys, thank you for watching us, and I apologize for the technical issue that we had before. It happens, you know, with internet and cameras, but we will always have a problem here and there. It comes with the territory. Before we go further, let me give a shout out to La Dos Marias, located at 200 New Main Street, best Mexican food in Yonkers, and I think in Westchester County, if not New York State. All right. Okay, guys, don't forget to support our local businesses by coming down, calling, order some food, come and have some drinks, meet new people. It's a great place. Wednesday to Sunday, they have karaoke, music, so come and have some fun. Today we have Carlos Burgos. Carlos is running for the 4th District, Councilperson for the 4th District. Carlos, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then follow up for why are you running?
Thank you, Brooke. Again, thanks for having me. My name is Carlos Burgos. I'm running for Yonkers City Council in the 4th District. I have been through the public school system myself. So here in Yonkers, I went to School 21, Mark Twain when it was Mark Twain, then Yonkers High School, went on to Borough Manhattan Community College, Hunter College, University of Pennsylvania for a master's degree in education, and now I'm at Rutgers doing a PhD in gender studies. So through that time, I helped start a community college called Gutman Community College. Also worked a little bit in the private sector doing private foundation, doing recruiting for nonprofits. And then I did some private foundation fundraising after that. So why am I running, Rue? Is that what?
Why are you running? Look, I always think that when we run,
yes,
it's not because we're happy with whoever is there. It's because maybe we saw certain things that could be done better. Maybe because we feel that we can serve the people better. So tell us, why are you running?
Yeah, sure. So what I found and what my neighbors have found is that our councilperson isn't responsive, and it's sort of came to my attention that it wasn't just me, and so I'm sort of excited to respond to that through what I'm creating as a responsive platform. That's responsive for 3 times, but the reality is the people in District 4 are asking for reasonable, totally tangible, attainable things like better street lighting, potholes being fixed that we've all memorized, transparency around education spending, things like that, that I feel I can definitely get answers to, if not find resolutions for. So that's why I ran, that's why I'm running, because I think I can, I'm sure I'll be more responsive than our current council person, and I'm excited to do it. I'm excited to meet people, excited to do the work. So.
Now, Carlos, as you said, people came to you and they expressed the discontent for things that were done, things that they felt they were done better. Of those things, what are the priorities? What are the things that people say, listen, I can deal with certain things, but this is the most important thing?
Yeah, I think, you know, on the local level, unfortunately, it's so many common things, you know, like a lot of what I hear, and to be clear, a lot of the stuff that I've learned is from me going out and talking to people, mainly sort of just before the petitioning process, of course my lived experience with neighbors, but through the petitioning process, getting to know folks. Main issues, one, is like the roads need to be fixed, and not just sort of like the thing that one of my neighbors has called the puzzle fix. We're not doing the puzzle. So sort of that's one thing. The garbage cans was a huge issue that seems to be resolved. It's getting resolved now that we made a bunch of noise. So I'm excited about that. We can definitely do more around cleanup and trash in the neighborhood. Education, again, education spending is a big issue. A lot of families in my district have talked about not knowing where the money's going and just wanting to understand how we're spending it. Not necessarily even getting to the point of we need to spend differently, just like questioning where it's going, how it's being spent. So that's another issue. Street lighting is a huge issue. A lot of my neighbors have talked about how they're dark places. where they have to walk at night after coming home from work. And so street lamps would be a solution to something like that, and they've asked for that, and they've not gotten it. Last thing I'll say, then I'll stop, is just having a council person who will pick up the phone. You know, like we hear all the time in my district that we can't get a hold of our council person, and we really reach out and we can't get in touch. And so I will be very much available, and I am available, and people know that. And so it feels great that we're doing that early on, and we're going to continue that.
Well, you know, every election year, every time that I go around interviewing people that are aspiring elected position, I ask that question: would you pledge to be reachable if you are elected? And they all pledge to be reachable during the election. And you are pledging to be reachable.
Yes.
Will you be reachable, Carlos, if you are elected?
You got to hold me accountable to that, but absolutely. I mean, you know, I think I don't know how other candidates campaign, but I know that on my campaign, people have been reaching out to me all the time, and I think I imagine myself to be more responsive than most people. So I can't say the comparison point, but I know that if you reach out to me, you will get in touch, and you will get an email from me. You'll get an email from, you know, 1 or 2 volunteers, and that's been happening consistently. So I feel good about that. I feel like we're starting off well. But your question is after.
But Carlos,
Yeah.
you should know how other candidates campaign, because you've been here. You reside in Yonkers. You have spoken to many of them before, you know, this year round. So you know how people campaign. Promises are made.
Yeah.
They understand the issues. They're going to resolve the issues. But you are one council in a group of 7 councils.
It's true. Yeah.
And very often you cannot do the things that you promised to do because you have to work with others. What would be your secret to be able to work with all those councils? What would you do differently?
You know, so I know my strongest skill is relationship building. It's what I do best. It's my strongest value. It's what I love to do. But I also move with real deep integrity, and I stand really strong on my position. But you have to compromise. That's the way the whole world works. And so when I think about your question, it's a common question. I think about the work that I've done in higher education, like help start a community college. We didn't all agree with each other when we were sort of creating new policies, creating new courses, moving through just the institutional bureaucracy of CUNY, right? And so I think about the way that I was able to navigate that space and how I'll be able to do similar things in the council. Now, there's that. But and there's other spaces where I see myself doing that, and it's translatable.
Now, have you ever sat back and analyzed the current council body and said, well, you know, I think that the problem is this or the problem is that. I think there is harmony or disharmony among them. Why do you think we have so many problems? They all understand the problem because they talked about those problems before they got elected. But once they elected, something is lost in translation.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about it?
Yes.
This is an interview, Carlos.
I have thought about it. Yeah, no, I've thought about it. I think one thing that sets me, that positions me well to join the council is that I do not have strong ties to Yonkers City government. I just don't. I built my career outside of Yonkers City government. And I think people will challenge me on that a little bit to say, oh, well, you don't have experience in the government. Well, I think it puts me in a really great position, and it gives me a lot of negotiating power to work with my colleagues and say, hey, I'm not sort of bound by by a lot of the things that people come in with, you know. So that's why I know we have lots of questions, but I can continue.
Okay, so people say that you don't have understanding of government, but you do have understanding of what the problem that the people are having. And that's what we need. We need people that understand. Maybe we need people that are outside government to come and represent the people and not represent the government.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree. And I will say, I mean, you know, working at a public institution like CUNY, or working at, studying at an institution like Rutgers Public University, it's in Jersey, right? A lot of the bureaucracy is very similarly navigated. Like, a lot of people come from government, go into universities, come from universities, go into government. And so it's a similar way to sort of move through an institution, a set of institutions that I feel well positioned to do. So, but I agree with you, Rube.
Now, Carlos, let's talk a little bit about the seniors in your district, okay? I have received many calls about the seniors. They're not happy with this, they're not happy with that. You know, the park, the things that are going on. Have any of them contacted you and spoke with you about those issues?
Yep, yes.
Can you elaborate on it?
Yeah, no, I was there this morning. I was at the Bernice Strickland Center this morning. Met with a bunch of folks there, and I've been on different calls for the past few weeks. Yeah, the issues, I mean, I feel like there's a few issues at hand, and I'm really frustrated about this, because this community these are our elders, you know, like these are people who my position is the seniors in our community have built our community, and they built our city, you know, and so I feel really frustrated about how they're being treated. Anyway, so one is they're being disregarded, right? Like, that's their experiences. They've been asking for things like better ventilation, the windows, you sort of can't see through the windows in the center. They've been asking for stuff like that. The bathrooms are a mess. They need to be renovated. There's talk of there not being ADA compliance in the center. And so to me, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. These are attainable, really tangible solutions that people are asking for that I don't see a problem going to figure out. Now, obviously, there's the Parks Department that runs this, you know, that is responsible for the center, but I see my position as, you know, hey, look, the seniors keep coming to me, what are we doing at the center, right? You know, and just sort of working with folks in the Parks Department to figure out how to come to a solution in a way that is not, in a way that is expeditious, right? In a way that is like timely, and not just like, oh, well, we're gonna put it off until something else happens. And then my understanding is the center is attended from people across Yonkers and people in other boroughs, and you know, around the city. And so it's not even, it's a huge issue, a huge group of constituents that aren't being heard on what I think are really reasonable asks.
Now let's move to housing, Carlos. Housing is a problem in Yonkers.
Yes.
Okay? And I think it's going to be even worse, okay, going forward. We see constructions going on in Yonkers. We see buildings being built in Yonkers. But the problem continues. Maybe it's even aggravating, because now we have housing, but we cannot afford to live there. And affordable housing is a relative term. Right. Because what's affordable to you might not be affordable to the majority of the people in Yonkers. That's right. People of low income.
Sure.
And people don't have housing, many of them, not because they don't work, it's because they cannot afford.
Right.
How do you see the housing problem in Yonkers?
I mean, you laid it out very clearly. The sticking point here for people on the council is obviously this housing ordinance that is trying to get new developers of large multifamily units to set aside 20% of the housing for affordable units, right? My position on this is the least we could do is 20%. Like, I think it's almost, it is a nod to the work that has happened to get us here, because there's no doubt it's been a difficult battle to get us even to the 20% ask. But I will join the council and move us to 30%, you know, and move us beyond
30%?
that. I'm happy to move us further. I don't know why, you know, I think we were at 10% and you know, it was proposed 20, so we can continue to move this along. Yeah.
Carlos, I don't know about 30%. Look, we are having a very difficult time with 20%.
Well, you know why?
Tell us why. I don't know.
We need another vote. We need another few votes. So if we get the right people in the council who are going to vote for that, we'll have no problem getting things through.
Well, but is the problem just the voting, or is the problem the consequences if we vote for 20%. Look, we might vote for 20%, it might pass. But what if the investors say, look, 20%, we are not investing in Yonkers. So we lose.
We find new investors.
You think?
Yes.
Please explain. Sell this to the people. It's not about this interview.
No,
is
it's
not,
a great question.
It's not about me. It's about them.
No, I'm responding to you because you're in front of me. We gotta care. So look, we find new investors. We live in Yonkers, New York, the fourth largest city in New York. We can find new investors. We're not in a place that people do not want to invest in. The problem, as I see it, and again, like push me on this, is that we need to push our investors. We need to push the development companies, and we can do that. That's not a problem, but we have to say, hey, are you keeping the people in mind? Are you keeping the families in mind? How? To demonstrate that in your proposal. And then we can create incentives around that.
But you know, you just said something that I never thought about. For all this time when I talk to people and they, you know, and I talk about investors, they say, well, but the investors then won't come. I'm thinking that maybe there is only 2 or 3 investors. There is more?
Stop, Ru, yes. There are many, many investors who want premium, you know, land right along the water, close to the city, close to the train stations. And it's, in my opinion, our responsibility. I'm not yet on the council, but if I get on the council, it will become part of my responsibility to find those investors, and we can do that. It would be second nature and sort of hard for me to think outside of that. That's what I'll say.
So those 2 or 3 investors that they keep talking about, that it creates a full sense of security, that they are the only ones, that's false. If those 2 or 3 don't want to invest, get other investors.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. We can find other investors. I'm sure we will. And what may happen is those investors will say, okay, all right, we'll you know, you've held us accountable, we will meet your need, and then that's, you know.
Also, why isn't that happening then?
Some people call it political will. You know, we can look at campaign finance and see who's getting donations from who. We talked earlier about who has connections to who. I am happy to say I have no interest, sort of, you know, I'm not funneling in money from firms or, you know, construction management companies. And so that may have an influence. I know it doesn't have, that gives me freedom. I don't feel connected or bound to that. But I do feel connected and bound to the people, right? And that's the bottom line. Like I was, you know, finally got a chance to really get in front of Community Voices Heard a few weeks ago. And those are the people who I'm accountable to. You know, these are the people who need housing, who are on the street asking for it. And my opinion is we should be asking with them the same questions that they're very sophisticatedly asking about development.
Now, Carlos, let's move to education.
Great, my favorite.
Okay, education is an issue. We all hear talk about the formula, and the formula. Very few of us understand the formula. We hear, but do we understand it? What does that mean? How would you help solve the problem?
That is like my mission, because I'm not an accountant myself. I don't understand the intricacies, but I have a vision for something like an online portal, online landing page that will make really clear how these sort of calculations are made, you know. And I think it'll be collaborative, it'll take time, but I think it's possible if they're, again, like we talked about will, right? Like if people want to do it, people want to be transparent, we can. And we need to, because we need to know what's happening, where the money's going, who's saying what. And so that online landing page, don't know where it'll live, don't know how it'll happen, but that's one idea, one way to get to it. But the other thing is, like, you know, something that's happening in my district, well, has happened over the years, is we've just sort of asked our councilperson to give us some of these answers, you know. And so if I'm asked, you know, let's say I was a councilperson, and you asked me that question, like, hey, what's going on with this formula? It becomes my responsibility to come back at the very, if not to the whole community, at the very least to that one person and say, hey, Ruth, this this is the thing that you were talking about. This is my understanding of it. Let's try to get to, let's try to make sense of it together, right? And that's how I.
Crime in Yonkers. Okay? We went from the second safest city in the country to the seventh. But let's not put this in a way that people think it's a Yonkers problem. Crime is going up all over New York State. Sure. Some people are blaming this rise in crime on the bail reform. How do you see it? Well, people are seeing the same.
Wow.
So how do you see it?
No, thanks for that. Yeah, no, thanks for that. Bail reform is very important, and we need to push for more bail reform, and we need to push for elder parole reform. These are very important pieces of legislation that I support wholeheartedly. They're state legislation. I'm not sort of running to vote on them, but I've been sending letters and making calls like anyone else who cares about these things. Crime is...
You know what, before you go to crime, let's talk about bail reform a little bit.
Sure.
Because they all interconnected. I don't know. Let me put it differently. I agree with bail reform. I do not agree with how bail reform came about and what it's doing now. Okay? I believe that somebody who stole a bread of loaf should not be in jail until trial because he cannot pay $50 in bail.
Right.
And then the guy who killed somebody just because he's a rich person and able to put 50, 100 or whatever $1,000 is able to come out just because I could put the money in.
Right.
Okay? I don't think it's fair. But I don't think it's fair as well that we created a revolving door that people who commit crime today, I'm talking about violent crimes, I'm not talking about stole a gallon of milk, I'm talking about handguns, stabbing, rape, violent crimes. They in today, and in a matter of hours, they're out because of bail reform. And now you said that we should even have more, meaning we should be more relaxed about. Please explain, because that is a very important point, Carlos.
Yeah. Well, I guess I would like to see some evidence of people committing violent crimes and being released. I'd like to see some. I don't believe that. That's all. I don't believe that that's what's happening.
Because you don't believe does not mean that it's not happening. Okay?
That's why I said I'd like to see some evidence on it. Because what I see and what I know is that the first example is more true, right? The person who stole a backpack ends up on Rikers Island for years. That's what we know to be the case. And the other thing is, when people are out on bail, there's nothing that happens. It's not like let's say someone commits a crime. We won't get specific on what the crime is. They come out for whatever reason, whether it be bail or not, and then what happens? They can't get a job, right? They can't get a job. They're stigmatized heavily. They're not given access to so many. In some instances, you can't vote, right? And so, what do we do with people when they come back?
But that's another problem. That's a problem of they deserve a second chance. Okay, and I agree with you.
Yes.
But right now, I'm stuck on the police reform, being more like a person committed a crime today, a violent crime. And Carlos, I can tell you, it happens.
Yeah.
You are arrested because you had a handgun in your book bag. You didn't actually use it to commit the crime, but somehow you got arrested and you had an illegal weapon.
Is that a violent crime?
What do you think you had the gun for?
No, wait, that's the rule. Hold on now. Wait a minute, hold on. You said a violent crime, and then you said possession of a weapon.
I said, I gave you specifics of violent crime. I said the use of a weapon,
okay.
rape, intent, because to me, you having a handgun in your backpack, it's an illegal gun, it's loaded, it is a violent crime. You don't have to use it.
Okay. I'm just not, I'm not, I'm just, now we're in the legal fun of what is criminalized,
I got you.
what is a violent crime, what is not. But so finish your thought.
No, so that's what, now you were talking about second chances. Go into, tell me about it.
Thanks.
And I agree with it. I agree that.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think so many people should, you know, the thing about jails and prisons is that, and I dare not sort of position myself as like an expert in carceral studies, but the reality is prison itself is a reform, right? It began as a reform, and we have seen historically, and there's a lot of work on this, like literature. Angela Davis has written about this. We've got lots of literature telling us that these reforms have not been successful. They haven't done what they're supposed to do. They haven't rehabilitated anybody, and so that's where my position comes from, is sort of thinking of people who've been thinking about prison and policing for years and saying, wait a minute, maybe what you're saying is right. Maybe there is a problem that this will not solve. Maybe you can't, because people keep coming out and there's nothing to catch them. And so then what do we do? How do we create, so one thing I talk about on my website, on my responsive platform, is in response to this, right? It's thinking about alternative sentencing and restorative justice practices. In my district, a big issue is property crime, right? People stealing packages, people stealing bicycles, stuff like that. So that's nonviolent stuff. So if that happens, what do? You arrest them and then you put them out, and then nothing happens. It doesn't make sense. So how can we think about a way to have a restorative option for people, an alternative option for people, so that we can actually do some work in the community and build relationships, rather than just like, throwing handcuffs on people, putting them in the car, bringing them back out.
Now, Carlos, I'm asking you a whole bunch of questions, maybe about things that you have nothing to do with. But
that's fair.
But people vote very often based on the person, what the person stands for. Do I believe in his principles? Do I agree with his line of thought? Do I agree with how he sees things, regardless if those things have anything to do with District 4 or not? But they will vote based on Carlos the man. Does he have integrity? Does he have knowledge and understanding of the problems? Can he offer a solution for the problems? So I very often interview people and ask questions that has more to do with the person than actually the district that they want to represent.
Yeah. And it's all connected, right?
And it's all connected.
And it's all connected. Yeah.
Now I have here a statement from Hector Santiago and also a question. Hector says, I think Carlos is a genuine guy, real straightforward. I would like to hear his thoughts on the Yonkers Raceway and potential expansion of the property.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm thinking about a resident who I met while petitioning, and she and her neighbors were very, very adamant about how the raceway created what they were describing as problems, right? They were describing it as like crime. People were breaking into their cars once the raceway came, once the casino came up, et cetera, et cetera. And the question, the useful question was, what is that development doing for the homeowners in the area? And so I think that's the question that I would present to anyone involved in this expansion is, okay, if we are considering expanding, first of all, the investors of the expansion, how are we holding them accountable to the people who live around the expansion, those who are affected? Who are we employing through that expansion? What sorts of benefits are we proposing for the people we're employing through that expansion, etc. And then, I hope that we would hold like a forum, a town forum, a group to get community members involved with that conversation. And I think, you know, I have to learn more about, honestly, I just, you know, thanks Hector for saying I'm a genuine person, I appreciate that. I'd have to learn more about the technical expansion, the technical aspects of that expansion to really make sense of it. But what I do know is, what I can say now is, I'm going to center the people's needs at every step, and that's what I do, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Homeless in Yonkers is a problem. With that homeless, and let me make it clear that not every homeless person doesn't have a job. Many do,
Of course.
but much more, you know, that are homeless suffer from mental illness, and they're all over the place because they don't have a place to go. We know that homeless in Yonkers is a consequence of the county. A lot of the homeless here, that problem is for the county to solve. But nevertheless, they're here in Yonkers,
Sure.
and they become a Yonkers problem.
Right.
How you see that issue, Carlos?
You know, there is a project that I've seen bubbling around, excuse me, for tiny homes in Yonkers. I think it's a great idea. That's my first response. I think that's a great idea. So that's one. The next thing is, if housing were truly affordable, we may be able to begin to see some change around this issue of homelessness. And the last thing is thinking about what you brought up, Rue, which is, you know, what comes with, you know, the plight of that circumstance, which is all sorts of things, right? I mean, it's just like frustration. I mean, I'd be frustrated too if I didn't have what I have, you know? And so I'm frustrated with what I have. Anyway, so mental health services obviously are huge. And I mean, it's something that I think about in the schools as well. Like there's not enough. Concrete example, my son would love to get him a therapist in his school. Wasn't able to do that because the therapist was sort of tied up in some bureaucratic mess that required him to get a diagnosis and then, you know, potentially be tracked. Anyway, so if we could figure out how to do some of that stuff early on, then I think, you know, the thing about mental health services is it is a great way to help to allow someone to sort of manage their condition, but it doesn't change their condition in the way that affordable housing would, in the way that the tiny homes would, in the way that you know, holding the developers accountable would. And so it has to be, in my opinion, it has to be really holistic. It needs to center the people. It needs to be humane, and not only humane, but like empathetic to people's condition. And yeah, it just makes me sad, you know, it makes me sad. And I think we've got a lot of work to do. And the last thing, I mean, maybe I said the last thing, but, you know, we obviously got to work across the sort of the levels, right? So I'd have to work with the county legislators. I'd have to work with the state. And so I'm happy to sort of do all the driving that I need to do to get in front of people to make the case for whether it's more funding, new policy, new legislation to be passed.
How do you see your future a few years from now? But before you answer that, tell me how or what would you address first if you were to be elected? And in a few months from now, or maybe a year from now, I'm talking to Councilman Carlos Burgos, and I say, Carlos, now you are elected, now you are a council person. What are your priorities? In my life, I have certain priorities. I have problems in my life, but I tackle those problems based on priorities for those problems. Okay, this is a bigger priority. I need to focus on this, then this becomes secondary and third. What are your priorities in a list of problems in Yonkers?
Yeah. I think first thing you'll see me do is like what I've called and what I'm going to call a listening tour, which is continued before I began running and will continue throughout. And I think that's going to be the way that I'll be able to gather and prioritize the needs, you know. So that's maybe separate from from an answer, but right now it seems to me like the seniors are top priority. They're the ones who have been sort of asking, that they're out protesting. I mean, to see a group of seniors protest is heartbreaking, you know, and so it must be incredibly urgent, and so that will be top. And then I think you'll see me getting to work on a lot of the issues that are on my platform, which have come straight from people, which is getting some lamp posts up, you know. We'll hopefully talk in here, and I'll talk to you about how we've got some roads being fixed, you know. And so those sorts of things are what people, those are the tangible, sort of like real life, immediate things that people will be able to see. And then in the background, you know, I'll be doing as many conversations as humanly possible, and then also building relationships across the government. So, you know, getting to know people. Again, I don't have these, I'm not sort of in with the, you know, the last family name or whatever, right? And so I have to do the groundwork to build those relationships, earn trust, and then get some stuff passed.
On District 4th, I heard about many cases of fentanyl in your district. It's all over Yonkers,
Sure.
but also in your district. How you see this issue? We all agree that fentanyl is a problem. Okay? No one can say, well, fentanyl is not. It is a problem. But what is the root of the problem? What can be done, Carlos?
Yeah. You know, I appreciate what you said earlier about me being one of many people to do this work, you know. But I do think people, this stuff is all so intimately connected that to isolate overdose on a specific drug in a specific moment is maybe unfair, you know. I think it's unfair because we need to sort of think holistically about what you're asking me about all the things. The homelessness certainly is interconnected with the overdose, right? And so is access to healthcare, right? Like I remember meeting a family on Kimball Avenue. Who, you know, the gentleman started, you know, tearing up because he said, we need somebody in there to fight for healthcare. And I mean, the reality is, we know people feel pain and they take things to resolve the pain. And sometimes that is not the best choice that you make. And so if I fully believe if we had a better healthcare system in this country, which is like a big issue that, you know, I obviously can't do much about. But if we had a better healthcare system, then we would potentially see, you know, less of this. So what I can do is continue to raise the issue, push my colleagues on this. You know, if there's a window to get funding in a particular area, you know, capitalize on that window and make it happen. I'm thinking about different sort of rehab potentials, and I just struggle with those because they're often like extensions of terrible institutions that people don't want to be a part of because they're underfunded and they're not maintained well. So how do we like maintain those institutions and make them welcoming places for people who are dealing with things like addiction, you know? So those are like really, I mean, it's hard to not be big picture with that question because it's such a huge thing.
Well, Carlos, we have to conclude this interview sooner or later, even though I wish we could stay here, you know, the entire afternoon chit-chatting and talking about things, but we can't, okay? So I'm going to give you last 2 or 3 minutes, or whatever time you want, you need, to talk to the people, to tell them why should they vote for you, what will the changes that you're going to bring in, and why should I vote for you? Because maybe there's lots of people that don't know, I'm undecided yet.
Sure.
Should I vote for A, should I vote for B? Mm-hmm. And they're listening.
Yeah.
And you might say something that says, I'm going to vote for this guy, or no, I'm voting for that guy.
Yeah.
So take the time to tell them why.
Thanks for that. Well, look, the reason this campaign has had so much success is because of this responsive platform that I'm committed to seeing through beyond just the election. And so what that will take is us being in touch. That will take, I sort of need to hear from people, and I hope that that will happen throughout. And I think that is one reason why you should vote for me. The other reason is, you know, I did come through a lot of challenges here, and you know, I don't want to sort of spend too much time belabor this point, but we've spent the past month sort of rolling in and out of court battles to get us through. And I think for some people that really matters, and it speaks a lot to the kind of commitment and dedication that we have. This morning, we had our last hearing at the Court of Appeals in New York State, and we came out with another win. And so we keep winning against, you know, this force that is trying to keep us off the ballot. And so the reason is because we're going to respond to people, and we want to do that, and we're invested in that. And so I'm excited about continuing to be responsive, continuing to meet folks, and you can help me out if you are as energized as I am and crazy as I am to do that. But anyways, Ru, I know we have to go, so I don't want to spend too much time. Thank you again.
Just one more thing, Carlos. If people want to reach out, I know that funds help, because you know, elections, you know, you have expenses, you have promotion, you have creative ads, so you need the support from the people. If somebody believes in what you're saying, believes that you are going to make Yonkers better, and say, look, I would like to donate for the Carlos Burgos campaign fund, how can they do that?
Well, I'll just say, I'll answer your question and I'll say one last thing.
Yes.
So you can go to Carlos4Yonkers.com. So Carlos4, as in District 4, number 4, the word 4, Yonkers.com. And there's a Get Involved page. And on the Get Involved tab, there's a Donate button. So there's your answer. You can click the Donate button. But what I would really like to see is you click the other button that says Volunteer. That would be perhaps more helpful at this stage when we have about 34, 35 days till election. And so I would appreciate donations, but even more so I would appreciate getting to meet folks and, you know, having a bunch of people sort of walking around, talking, getting to know each other, speaking about the campaign, getting to know the issues together, and building what we're starting to build, which is a grassroots campaign movement in District 4.
Social platforms is a powerful tool nowadays. Are you on Instagram, Facebook? Tell them.
I'm on all of them, Ru. You're the best. I'm on. So it's the same thing. Carlos4 Yonkers. Trying to keep it as simple as possible and consistent. You'll see it on the website as well. So Carlos4 Yonkers on Instagram, on Twitter, on what's the other one? Facebook. We're on LinkedIn, but you know, it's just my personal page, but I'm blasting it there. So wherever you search Carlos4 Yonkers, you should find me hanging out, trying to get you all to listen to my platform.
So guys, you heard it. If you need to reach out to Carlos, go on those platforms that you just mentioned, engage, email him, join his volunteer team, make this happen. You have the power to make it happen. It's up to you. If you want change, you can get change. Elections have consequences. Election, it's important. Exercise your right. Don't forget, it's when does the...
June 22nd.
From June 22nd to?
No, June 22nd is the day.
Oh, June 22nd is the day.
Get out the
vote. Early
vote
vote starts?
Early votes, you got it.
Yeah. So, guys.
The absentee ballot thing is another timeline.
So you heard it from Carlos. If you believe in what Carlos has to offer, if you think that he's the man for the job, support him and vote for him. Vote your conscience. As always, Yonkers Voice does not endorse or oppose any candidate. I am not for Carlos or against Carlos. My job is to bring the candidates to Yonkers Voice platform where they can talk about what they stand for, what makes them them, okay, what makes them the best, so you can make an informed decision. The voting, it's a serious thing, but I think it's equally serious to vote based on information.
There it is.
Until next time, guys, Thank you for watching. Leave your comment and let us know how are we doing. Until next time.